Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
So many of us are starting to realize how important it is to be an example. How to be a good in the world is a great example of this. Brenda Knight is a publisher. She's an editor who writes about women's history and issues affecting women's lives today. And an IndieFab's 2013 Publisher of the Year. Brenda has authored The Grateful Table, She Rose, which I love. I love that book, by the way. The Poetry Oracle, Wild Women in Books, and the American Book Award-winning Woman of the Beat Generation. She also does volunteer work with women newly diagnosed with breast cancer. Brenda lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, is a publisher and editor for Kleist Publishing and Viva Editions, and also somebody who I really like to talk to. So welcome back to the show, Brenda. How are you today?
I'm good, and I'm so happy to be here. Beautiful spring day.
Very nice. Yes, actually, we are having a beautiful spring day here. How is it over there? Where are you, in San Diego?
No, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area,
that's right.
which I have to admit that San Diego does have the perfect weather. And so I'm hoping for a little imperfect weather actually this week. It's supposed to rain, and California's in a drought, and we need it. Oh,
yeah. Yes, absolutely. And there's so much controversy going on over that right now as well in the activist circles with, I don't know, and is anybody talking about, I'm just curious, is anybody talking about this recent discovery that Nestle had been taking the water without permission or something like that? Is California talking about that?
Yes, we are talking about it. And then last night I was catching up on the San Francisco Chronicle, and I can't remember if it's like Crystal Geyser, like maybe they're the ones that are owned by Nestle or something. But it was discovered that they were taking water from another place in the Sacramento River Valley and the American River Valley. I mean, that's what flows down to us, like from the mountains and the snowpack. And so there's a groundwater is not protected by law, I guess, like in certain areas. Oh. And so these water companies are going and just tapping into the groundwater, even in national parks, which is kind of shocking to me. I had a photograph of somebody doing it, and I was just like, my God. I mean, it's almost like they're outlaws, like they're corporate outlaws.
Isn't that like what we used to call poaching, you know?
Exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Well, they are definitely not doing good in the world.
No, you got that right, Bernard.
They are not doing good in the world. Now, I didn't know this about you, and I'm very interested to hear about this, that you were part of the team that put together the Random Acts of Kindness movement, which I followed for quite a while on YouTube and Facebook and everything. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with that, and more about the Random Acts of Kindness movement.
Absolutely. Well, it goes back to the mid-'90s, which seems like, I don't know about you, but now it seems like, you know, rainbows and unicorns were like galloping around, that it was like such a different era and sort of more innocent, you know.
Yes.
I guess it was before smartphones or something, before like tech had completely had us in the grip. So I think you know, Bernard, from like a previous show that I told you I used to work at HarperCollins, which is a great place to learn about publishing. But at a certain point, I realized I was working for Rupert Murdoch, And so I thought, I don't think I really like this, talking about corporate. And then, once I saw what was happening with Fox News and all that, I thought, this is not who I am. So I decided I wanted to work for indie publishing, which is my home. Indie publishers are much more unique, and usually they're visionaries.
Yeah.
And so I found out about this little company called Canary. It was run by this couple that had been like revolutionaries, like underground newspapers and things like that. And somehow that led to them having a press that was all about inspiration. So I got a job there. I used to joke that I used to work for the meanest man in publishing, Rupert Murdoch, and then I worked for the kindest people in the world at Canary, did random acts of kindness. So I came right as it was starting. It started with a tiny, tiny print run, I think 2,000 copies of Random Acts of Kindness and bumper stickers, and just a big idea that we would put that out there and hopefully it would do some good in the world, and that we would market it very grassroots style, like person to person, try to get out there and demonstrate actually acts of kindness, and see what happened. So, it seemed to go pretty well. There was a good reception. We had to pretty quickly do a reprint of Random Acts of Kindness. And then, but it was still a small press. Actually, it was 6 blocks away in Berkeley from where Viva Editions is. And usually, every day we would get a little bit of mail, a couple of letters, an order or two, mostly bills. And then one day we got a knock at the door, and it was the postman, and he was like, I need help. And so we ran out, and he had bags and bags of people writing to us about Random Acts of Kindness, because in the very back of the book, it said, please tell us your acts of kindness and your ideas and if you've experienced anything. And it just electrified people, Bernard.
Wow.
And they wrote to us. And so we sat down and started tearing open the letters. We were laughing. I remember, sometimes we were even crying because, there were all kinds of people. And a lot of children wrote in, and that was just oh my God, I was just going, I can't believe this.
Wow.
We really cracked into something. And then there were also a lot from elders and people like that. And so it just struck something in people's hearts, and I sort of really took notice, Bernard. And again, this is right when I'd come from working for an international, multinational corporation where publishing was, sure, it was about ideas, but it was also about the bottom line and money.
Right.
And I went completely to the opposite, where it was about inspiring people and helping. And sure, we wanted to people to get paid and pay the salaries and be able to pay the printer, but it was really about making a difference in the world. And so that stuck with me forever. We did many versions, kids' Random Acts of Kindness, even Random Acts of Kindness by animals, because there's animal heroes, as we all know.
Yep.
And so that was really fun. I got really involved in the doing more of the Random Acts of Kindness books. And so, I moved on from that company after about 10 years and landed here, which is, my home here, where I can be more specific about the vision that I want to see in helping the world. But that feeling never left me. And I think, Bernard, when times are tough and when the news is just every day seems to get stranger and stranger and harder, I think that's when we need to double down on kindness. And so that was my inspiration to be a good in the world, is that I think we live in tough times, but I do truly believe that humans are inherently good, and we need to remind each other of that and go from the power of one, to how we can empower all and share and help each other.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brenda. The idea of the fact that we are living in such difficult times, and I hear it all the time, doing the work that I do, where people are getting frustrated, they're losing their faith in humanity, and so many other people that, let's say, are doing the same work that I'm doing, visionaries and prominent people in alternative media, have even asked me, how can you maintain faith in humanity with how horrible we are to each other? And I agree with you. It's the same thing. We have to make the effort to go out and be the example for the good within people. I agree with you. We all have inherent good within all of us, but sometimes it takes a little bit of effort, and hopefully this book is going to help us help inspire people with that.
I from your mouth to God and Goddess ears.
Now, tell us a little bit about the book. What we are living in difficult times, and it is very relevant. Do you think this is a good time for it? Is there a reason why the acts of kindness movement grew like it did in the mid '90s versus, right now? Could with the breakout of the riots and all the protesting and all the fear in the Middle East and whatnot. What makes it so relevant now?
Well, I mean, I run on intuition, which I think you do too, and probably a lot of your listeners and co-producer are very in tune with, the vibes, but especially harnessing your intuition. And so I would say that the idea popped into my mind about 4 years ago. I know it was in 2008 that when the economy crashed and we came very close to having another Great Depression. I mean, we had the Great Recession. And then, how the major corporate news media is, they want to say, okay, well, 2 years after that, we're done with that. We're moving on. Everything's fine. But, I just, I don't think everything is fine. I mean, I can just look at my own family and friends and loved ones. And, the economy isn't that much better.
No, it's not.
And, yeah. And, there's just so much, now we have crazy storms and tornadoes, it seems like every time we turn around. And so I think that, maybe I'll just state it this way. I think that the major corporate news is really, they have a product to sell. They're constantly wanting to sell us, and their product is fear. So they want us to be really scared about all the terrible things that are going on, and superstorms and Frankenstorms. I mean, hello, it's a really bad storm. Do we need to call it a Frankenstorm? I don't think so. And so obviously they're trying to engender fear, and why would that be? To sort of control and keep people people are more easily controlled when they're afraid. And so I was just sort of observing that. I mean, it's to the point where I don't even really watch the news anymore. I'll listen to the radio. I like the radio. So I just thought, what in the world? And I felt disconnected, even though I'm a very communal person and I, have a lot of friends and regularly visit them and everything. I think maybe because I was stopping watching corporate news, I felt a little cut off. And so I thought, I want to go back to that person-to-person feeling. And so I started, being very mindful, sort of a mindfulness too, of doing acts of kindness and goodness, and sort of I wanted to focus on the good news. And I really wish there was a good news channel, and I guess you contribute to that, Bernard, because you're good news and real information. But I thought I want to in my own little way combat all this negativity that comes from the mass media. So I went on a search for all the good news stories, and so there's many of those. There's literally hundreds of them in my book, Be a Good in the World. And I'm telling you, if we gathered a lot of people together that had the skills and the research and the ability to produce TV, we could have the opposite of Fox News. We could have good news TV, because there's people doing all kinds of things to help. But do you hear about it? No. Mm-mm. And so not only in the book, Be a Good in the World, do I tell as many of those stories that are truly inspiring to me, that on the Be a Good in the World Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Pinterest and all the social media, every day I am uploading as many good news stories as possible. And some of them are amazing. Last week there was the woman in Brazil who lived in a very poor part of, I think she lives in Rio, sort of in the ghetto, where the there's like feral children
Right.
like on top of trains and everything. And and they have a water issue there too. And so she realized that there was a way that they have a lot of dew and moisture, and there was a way to trap dew and moisture from people's like roofs and homes, and that it was enough to actually, she made this little invention that could trap the water, and it would actually like sustain the household for weeks at a time.
Oh,
You
wow.
don't even need, yeah. So that's on the Be a Good in the World Facebook. It's also on my personal Facebook. And that's pretty amazing. This poor lady looked around, saw there was an issue, thought, what could I do? And actually, like, used her own beautiful brain to come up with a solution. So that's one of the messages in Be a Good in the World, too, is stop complaining. And if you see a problem, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
What can you do? And it turns out there's a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're talking about real world applications of being a good and doing good. What are your thoughts on our attitude? How can we get that attitude back of looking for the good? What can we do to change our attitude? Well, a good example, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is as you're talking about this woman, I am so honored there's a person out there doing this, and I'm so grateful for it. But like here in my home city of Roanoke, we're having a discussion, let's say, a very heated discussion with the homeless situation. And of course, there's two sides to it. We've got the people that are living in an up and coming neighborhood that was always a very poor neighborhood, but that's where the homeless shelter is. And of course, with the homeless people, you are going to have some mentally ill, you will have some drug problems, and you will have some, public urination and garbage and things that comes along with that. But I couldn't help but feel for me during this discussion that I was having on one of the local newspaper articles on the situation. I was like, well, the problem with what's happening is our attitude. And we really need to change our attitude of thinking that these are not human beings and whatnot. And I guess the reason why I'm asking is because it goes beyond our attitude toward homelessness. It goes with our attitude toward each other, toward different races, toward different countries, toward different class levels, income levels. What can we do to perhaps change that attitude? And I'm hoping that this book is going to help with that.
Definitely. I do address homelessness, but I'll go back to your original question, and then because you asked some really great questions in that. So on May 19th, one of the ways to really change your attitude is make it a complaint-free world. Try to go one day without complaining, and I'm telling you that is hard.
Yes.
But you can do it, and even better, go a week. And if it's hard for you to accomplish that in one day, then it's time to make some changes in your life, which is to think positively, live in the present, and appreciate where you are, who you are. And today, remember that today is a gift to be embraced and accepted. And so there was a book that came out about 10 years ago called Make It a Complaint-Free World, and it came with like a little rubber band bracelet. And so the whole thing is to be complaint-free, you put on this little rubber band bracelet, and like any rubber band will do. And so every time you complain, switch it to the other wrist. And so the goal is to go 21 days without switching the bracelet, which is unbelievably hard.
That's right.
I was sort of shocked to realize that I was a really big complainer, Bernard, which is, I got to admit that, right?
Yeah.
So it was a really good exercise for me, which I highly recommend. And then I realized, oh my God, like if I was complaining, I was like spewing out negative energy and like, sort of like splashing that all over everybody in my community, which is actually very thoughtless, you know. And so, homeless people homeless are people too. And I would say that, instead of like complaining about it, what can you do? And there's some I'd say there's probably like 10 to 15 in my book, Be a Good in the World, where I talk about what you can do to help the homeless in like a very meaningful way, where the money's not going to a bureaucracy, but it's really going to help. But again, in the same way that lady in in South America figured out a way to get water to her poor neighbors. There's all kinds. There's like a tiny house movement that's like specifically for the homeless, and and so you give them their own community and make sure it really works. So you don't like just take them out to the end of town, like, say, here's some hammer and wood, some like, hammer and wood, and like build your own tiny house and then never go back. You have to like reintegrate them, because homeless people are so used to not even getting eye contact from people. People treat them like they're like garbage on the street or something, which is shocking. But, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, which has an enormous population of homeless, I see it all the time. And so what I do is I volunteer at Glide Memorial. I'm sure you've heard about the famous Glide Memorial. It's in the Tenderloin. It's in a really gnarly part of San Francisco, Bernard. I mean, really gnarly. There's hundreds of people that line up. What I started noticing even before the economy crashed in 2008 was it wasn't just like disheveled-looking homeless dudes. It was also like some moms and kids, and that's when I realized we're not taking care of our people, and there's a lot of like working people that live in their car.
Yes.
They go to work every day, and then they have to like shower at the gym or something, and they live in their car.
Yep.
So the homeless person could be the lady standing next to you in Walgreens, like, buying her like toiletries or something and, snacks. And then she's having to like go back into her car, find a safe place to park, and like, take care of her like two kids in the back seat to sleep in the front. So homeless people are not always so cliche, and I could talk about it like all day and the rest of the week. But on June 9th, in Be a Good in the World, it's called like Honor Abused Women and Child Awareness Day. You can do really little things. You can collect coupons in the Sunday paper for life's little essentials, buy the merchandise, and then donate it to a shelter or a home for abused women and children. I donate magazines and books to my shelter of choice, which is Delancey Street. Delancey Street not only helps homeless, but also helps reformed prisoners and people who have substance abuse issues. And so find an organization that you feel simpatico with, and even if you can only give like an hour or two a month or something, like get involved. But the people in Roanoke need to like shut up and put up, is what I would say.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's so funny because they said, well, what's the solution? I'm like, well, Salt Lake City had a great solution. They gave all the homeless people homes. So there's a solution right there. But kind of like what you're saying is, maybe perhaps set up a I don't know what to call it, a village of some sort to help people. And I think the number one thing is to have compassion, empathy, and to realize that there is a human being in that state, and it could be you, it could be your brother, it could be your family, it could be any of us.
And it's always going to be somebody's son and somebody's brother and somebody's sister, and it could also be somebody's mom. I mean, I think that may well be the case in Roanoke, but San Francisco is undergoing this tech boom. It's becoming crazily expensive to live here. I'm currently in a debate with my landlord who's raised my rent like $300 like in the last year, which is a lot. I mean, publishing is not like a
right. Brenda, hold that thought. Yeah. We got a commercial break, and we'll be right back. You got it. Thank you.
And now back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Brenda Knight, and we are talking about being a good in the world. And before the break, Brenda, we were just wrapping up our discussion on homelessness and how easy it is to end up being one of those people in the homeless shelter. And you were telling us how in San Francisco now the rents are going sky high, and your experience of what's happening.
Right. Yeah. So it's even, touching me and many people I know. I mean, I had already moved to the East Bay, which is a little bit cheaper, but because San Francisco is so finite, it's only like 48 square miles. And so, everybody that wants to come here from all over the world and work in the tech boom can't all squeeze in there. So now they're coming across the bridge where
Lord.
the rest of us moved to live in a more affordable way. And so, we see definitely there's a large amount of the working homeless, and so I think that the San Francisco Bay Area is going to need to be pretty, pretty aggressive about figuring out the solution for affordable homing for all, because it's getting really crazy. Like a one room studio. Is between, it's close to $3,000 now.
Oh my gosh.
So that's one room, and so that's pretty unaffordable for most people. But so here I am talking about dishing out bad news, and there I was. But again, it's what can you do about it? So that's what I try to bear in mind. And so, and be a good in the world. In September, I have the idea to friend a family. So you can sponsor a low-income family via boxproject.org. And the Box Project helps struggling families all over America, actually, and it especially tries to find people in depressed regions of rural America. And so each box has $50 worth of food, clothing, and medical supplies each month. And so the idea is to not just provide financial support, but emotional support as well.
Right.
And so, you can put in little notes, and, the people, can, are encouraged to communicate with you. And so obviously there's a lot of friendships and long-term, relationships that bloom from that. And then,
let me ask you a question, Brenda. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is for people living in the United States?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's one of the reasons I ended up in book publishing, and because I love to do research. And so this week I'm trying to pinpoint just how many people live in poverty in America. And so I haven't pinpointed that, but I am seeing that it's a much larger number, it's many more millions than any one of us would have thought. And it's in part for some of the reasons, the economy really isn't that good. There really still is high unemployment. And even those that are employed, maybe they're working two jobs, maybe they're stocking groceries at night and then also pulling a shift at the local movie theater. I have friends that work two jobs. They have to work two jobs to live here. And yet working two jobs, they're still living actually technically in poverty. So I'm right in the middle of a big fact finding, and so hopefully the next time you and I are talking, I can let you know.
Yes.
But instead of complaining, I gotta take my own medicine. Instead of complaining, what can I do? And so you can be mindful. Again, you can be kind. If you see somebody that needs help, just do it. Whatever you can give, maybe $50 a month or $50 a year to the boxproject.org to help families is too much for you. But maybe, $5, donated to Habitat for Humanity is exactly the right thing for you to do. So whatever is right for you personally, what can you do to help?
Absolutely. And, speaking of that, the whole poverty thing that you're going to be studying, gentrification seems to be a big issue here locally in Roanoke, where a lot of people are living in, they call it the West End of Roanoke, and there's families that have been there 100 years, 150 years, and of course, the developers come in, they make the neighborhood nice, the rents triple, and the families get kicked out. And that's another thing that we need to consider and have compassion for. But anyway, we'll talk about that on your next book when you come back.
That's
on that.
right.
But as far as what's in the book, Be a Good in the World, do you offer other examples like what you just did, as far as how do I say, charities with integrity that actually touch the people?
Absolutely. I mean, good old UNICEF, like you can feed a family. Like there's a World Food Day. And again, like these people are wanting to remind people, maybe you're okay. Maybe, you worked really hard, like so many of us do. And so you finally got it together where you're making it and you're comfortable. But just remember, not everyone else is. So UNICEF works really hard to give kids a healthy start. And whatever you contribute, literally, it could be like $1, it could be like 50 cents. You can go to unicefusa.org and see all the options that are available to you. But I mean, what is really shocking is that malnutrition still takes 1,000 children's lives a day. Now, this is not just in America, it's like the world.
Right.
But that's a lot of kids. And so what can you do to help? And so I really think that UNICEF is a beautiful company, and they have a little bit of bureaucracy, but they're really doing everything they can to get out there and help. So I feel like they're a place of integrity. But, it's not all, Be a Good in the World is not just all about, like, helping hungry kids and elders. It's funny, like, I realized that after the book was done, and I sort of, I put it down and then came back to look at it again, and I realized that this was a surprise to me, but I talked more about elders in the military than I would have thought, because, again, like, people go over, they serve, in the military, they come back, they may have extreme PTSD, or, they may have all kinds of issues or not be able to get a job. And so what can you do to help? And these people did go over to serve all of us, like, and make sure, that we are safe and celebrate freedom. And so this is my favorite little thing you can do. You can take your unused frequent flyer miles and donate them to military families or to military veterans. So, say somebody like is, injured in Iraq or Afghanistan or something, and their family can't afford to go see them at the hospital. Well, you can donate, you can gang together all your frequent flyer miles that are unused. This isn't costing you one penny. And they can go to a family and they can be helped because, love is, of course, the best medicine of all.
Yeah.
And if people can see their loved ones, they're going to heal much faster. So there's literally hundreds of ideas in there. But I will share a funny thing with you, Bernard.
Yes.
Like, right at the very end of, like, right when I was supposed to turn the book in, I realized that half of the book was about the environment and being more ecocentric. And I had to, like, go back and, like, take a lot of that and, like, take it out and then put more in about, like, just helping people because, that's my maybe number one passion outside of publishing is the environment. So maybe that other book is sort of halfway written, but it was really interesting to sort of go back and see like what was really on my mind. So even though I didn't know we were going to be in a drought, I have many entries about water, many entries about tree planting. And I'll tell you one piece of good news again that we're not going to hear on the corporate news, but we'll hear it on the Bernard Show, which is there was actually in 2014, there was actually a major shift in the ozone layer for the better. Now, when was the last time you heard something good about the ozone layer?
Right.
And so the scientists went back to see what had happened, and China had a mass tree planting initiative because, you know, they have a lot of storms and strangeness and there is a lot of like desert there. And so they're very concerned about their climate and their environment and, you know, all the, pollution they have. So they planted millions of trees, and that alone made a big, healing to the ozone layer.
Wow.
And I went around, like I had read that in it was like a tiny little paragraph buried in like page 1,000 of like the local newspaper. And I ran around saying like, oh my God, did you guys hear? Like the ozone got better. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, China planted millions and millions of trees, and it's helping the ozone. And so I thought, first of all, I thought, where's that good news channel so that I'm not just the only woman running around saying like, oh my God, did you know? And so, but like, see, there are good things happening, and that also shows us like, hey, if each one of us planted a couple of trees in our backyard or front yard, like, say 1 million people planted 2 trees, like that's going to make a big positive change. So there's little things you can do. Planting a tree, it has to be done right, but like you can do it. Pretty much all of us can do it. We just need a tree and a shovel and a place to put it.
Absolutely, and it's very easy to do. Even I, who don't know how to garden very well, can do that. Brenda, let me ask you about utilizing the book. Now, let me see if I'm understanding the way. I didn't get my copy yet. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to look at it, but is it 365 days of good deeds? Is it like one for every day, like a calendar, so an inspiration for us, kind of?
It is, and some of them are really simple. Like one of them is take 1 second, how you can take 1 second and save a life. And that is to literally just use the sticker on your driver's license to say that you will be an organ donor. Yeah. And actually, you're probably going to end up saving more than one life, actually. So that's something you can do in 1 second. And a lot of us just think like, oh, do I really want to do that? I don't want to think about that now. I'll think about that later. Well, why don't you go ahead and think about it now and do that, because that's a huge act of kindness. And so there is an idea for every single day of the year. And let's look at what today's is. Today is May 12th, right? Mm-hmm. So today, May 12th, is ask how are you and mean it. Ask someone how their day is going and start a conversation. Sometimes people want to talk more than they let on, and your interest will show them you care. One day you'll get the chance to tell some kind-hearted person exactly how you are. Your answer to that question might not always be pretty, but it will feel wonderful to be heard. Listening is an act of love. And then actually tomorrow is like how you can get involved in Habitat for Humanity.
Ah.
Yeah. And but instead of like using it like a sort of an everyday inspiration, which was the original idea, and that's a good way to use it, people are telling me that they will do clairomancy and sort of like just open it up randomly and see what they get, and that they're enjoying what they get for that. But it ranges from little things like like I said, the fastest way to change a life is to save a life is to sign up to be a donor, which is putting that little sticker on your driver's license. Others are, tell the truth, which sometimes we need to be reminded. And sometimes it is, and then sometimes it's pretty complicated. Like, for example, when I'm talking about water wisdom and how we all need to be more water wise. Yeah. And so that has like 8 steps in it. And then August 25th is one of my favorites that I'm getting a lot of interesting response to, Bernard. It's called Turn Off Your TV and Turn Your Brain Back On. And I tell you very specifically what to do. And then I also tell you, like, if you're just letting your kids sit there and watch TV all the time, you're doing them a disservice. You need to be engaging with your kids, making sure they play, making sure they learn, making sure they read. And so if you just let the electronic babysitter do your job, that's not an act of kindness, and I encourage people to really think about that.
Absolutely, and it's funny you mentioned that because, let's see, Mother's Day was just the other day here in the United States, and I saw a meme going around that said, Happy Mother's Day to the iPad raising your child, and I giggled, but it's the same thing. It's the 21st century version of the television. They're watching their Nickelodeon on the iPad now.
Very good point.
Yep. Anyway, I can't believe we're running out of time. We have about 7 more minutes left on the show. So I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about the story that you saved for the end of the book. What does a kinder world look like to you?
Oh, yeah. That's pretty much the first time I'm telling that story in writing to Bernard. And I talk about how, I was a country bumpkin that lived in West Virginia, which is a beautiful place, and I love it there. But I moved out to the big city, San Francisco, and because I'd lived on a farm and on a dirt road, I wanted to be what I guess I thought was really sophisticated and work in international business and be an international businesswoman. So I got myself a job at an import-export company. It was one of the largest in the world, and I did anything. I answered the phones, I packed boxes, I even drove the forklift, which I actually quite enjoyed. But my main goal was to become a buyer because you get to go around the world and shop on somebody else's dime, which I just thought it couldn't get any better than that.
Right.
So it took me 4 years to finally work my way up and prove myself also in the marketing and sales side of it. So finally I got the promotion, and then the day before we were going to go to India, Hong Kong, mainland China, the big boss showed me the factories we were going to visit. And he visited them all the time. He was there probably 6 times a year, which is quite a lot of travel. He was a merchant marine that built a business up from nothing, bootstrapped up a multinational corporation. He was a very tough businessman too, very tough. But I proved myself to this tough guy. And so he showed me the factories, and he basically had a sort of photo albums. So he opened the one and he said, "Here's India." And I'm telling you, Bernard, my jaw hit the ground. I was in shock because I saw that children were making the products. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I said, "Those are kids." And he said, "Yeah, what of it?" And I said, "Well, first of all, I had no idea we were using child labor. That's pretty horrifying." And then I said, "I happen to know that all of our products made in India need lacquering. And so they need fans, ventilation, masks in order to do that." And plus the kids looked like they were 7 or 8 or something. How could they even do that? But I said, "Where are the masks? Where are the ventilations? Where are the fans?" I said, "These kids are going to be coughing up their lungs before they're 10. And if that, I'm sure you've had this before, sort of a feeling of an out-of-body experience.
Oh, yeah.
And so part of me couldn't believe what I was saying because I was obviously blowing my chance, I no longer wanted anything to do with child exploitation.
Right.
But my mouth was just off and running. I mean, the fact that I was basically telling him he was wrong and he couldn't believe it. And so it was I was floating above watching myself, talking to him. And he said, they consider themselves lucky to have a job, and so should you.
Ooh.
And I said, "I can't participate in child exploitation. I got to get out of here. I can't do this. This is not what I signed up for." So I went home and I cried and I called my best friend. I told her what happened. She was shocked too. And I said, "But what am I going to do? It's so expensive to live in San Francisco. What do I do without a job?" And she said, "You'll be fine." She said, "All you want to do is talk about books and read. You should be in publishing." And so she said, "I'll help you research a place to work in publishing." And so so she encouraged me to do what I wanted to, which was to go in and quit. So I went in the next morning. I showed up at 7:30. I tendered my resignation. I said, "Thank you for all that I've learned," and I got the heck out of there. And even though he was shocked, I could see a glint of respect in his eye. And so I did talk my way into a job at HarperCollins. It took 3 informational interviews, but I did it. And I'm telling you, it was one of those, sort of crossroads of life,
right.
And it was a big risk, but I have never regretted it. And what it really did was it reminded me to, like, don't just blindly go into things. Like, I should have known, I should have done the research, but I was like in my early 20s, and you know, that was before Google too, right?
Right.
But I will never do anything that smacks of child exploitation. I don't support that. I think it's very, very wrong. And so any of the books that we do overseas that are for color in Asia, I get in contact with the factories to make sure no children work there, and you can
Right.
actually request a certificate. So I always request a certificate to make sure there's no child labor or no exploitation or no sweatshop aspect to it. And then also to sort of put your money where your heart is, I'm donating the royalties to Be a Good in the World to save the childhood movement. And it's like Bachpal Andalam, who actually won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, and he works in Asia and India to try to stop child labor, which is very wrong. Children should be allowed to be children. They shouldn't be making junk that we buy in junk stores. They need to live their beautiful young lives. And so that got me started on being a good in the world.
Wow.
And so, you know, I've never turned back. And we all can be good. We all can contribute. And you do all the time, Bernard. So I want to thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Brenda. And we're out of time, and I want to thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for putting out this wonderfully inspiring book. What is the Facebook address? I would love to have that on my list.
Okay, well, it's Be a Good in the World, and then the Twitter is A Good in the World, but I will ask you to be a friend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Brenda. We've got to go. Everyone, we'll see you next week. Next week will be my monthly consciousness talk. We love you. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.